Good morning, everyone. On this Thursday of the sixth week of Easter, we're still reading in the book of Acts, and we're in chapter 18, verses 1 through 8. Paul left Athens and went to Corinth. There he met a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla because Claudius had ordered all the Jews to leave Rome. He went to visit them, and because he practiced the same trade, stayed with them and worked, for they were tent makers by trade. Every Sabbath he entered into discussions in the synagogue, attempting to convince both Jews and Greeks. When Silas and Timothy came down from Macedonia, Paul began to occupy himself totally with preaching the word, testifying to the Jews that the Christ was Jesus. When they opposed him and reviled him, he shook out his garments and said to them, "Your blood be on your heads. I am clear of responsibility. From now on, I will go to the Gentiles." So he left there and went to a house belonging to a man named Titus Justus, a worshiper of God. His house was next to a synagogue. Crispus, the synagogue official, came to believe in the Lord, along with his entire household, and many of the Corinthians who heard believed and were baptized. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So we left off yesterday where Apostle Paul was in the marketplace proclaiming the gospel to them, attempting to share the gospel from the perspective of what a typical Athenian would know, which was very little of the Jewish faith and the notion of a God that transcends wood and stubble and figures. So he's trying to appeal to them, and it was going quite well in his speech, but when he came to the resurrection of the body, that's where he got into trouble. But there were a few that did believe in Jesus. And then he left Athens and went to Corinth. Now, Corinth was the cesspool of Roman Empire for its sexual immorality, and it was not exactly the best place in the world to be in. It was a major trading center and the like. And some have speculated when Apostle Paul writes his letter to the Romans from Corinth, that in chapter 1, when he's talking about the depravity, he was seeing a real life right there in the city of Corinth. At any rate, he comes into contact with this couple who had come out of Rome because of persecution against the Jews there. Now, this could be, and we don't know for sure, but it could be over because we know from another source of a controversy within the Jewish community over Christus. Is this the Christ? Could that have been the thing that caused the emperor to just, banish all the Jews out of there? We don't know. At any rate, at this point, we have this beautiful couple that come there. Now, were they believers before they come to Corinth? Or was it after they came in contact with Apostle Paul? That isn't really real clear on here. But this beautiful couple, Aquila and Priscilla. What's interesting is Apostle Paul will write in the book of Romans, chapter 16 at the end, how incredibly important this couple was, even to maybe even save his life. So all the details of what went on were not necessarily told. Another thing about it is that Priscilla is mentioned first, which is quite rare that you put the wife first in his letter to the Romans. And it could be that she comes from a very prestigious family in the city of Rome. At any rate, he is there doing his work. Perhaps they have the shop on the lower level, and then they have the upper floors where they lived. And so Aquila and Priscilla had probably one floor, and then Paul had another floor. And the leather works was kind of where they got their money for doing things. And then we have Silas and Timothy coming from Thessalonica, and they report how God has been working with them there. And then we have a little comment here. Paul began to occupy himself totally with the preaching of the word. And we do know from other sources that, other books of the epistles, that there was a collection taken at Philippi. Remember, he had been there, and that's where Lydia was, and that's where the guard and his whole family became believers. There was a collection made, and it was brought to Apostle Paul. And that could have been the reason why he had extra funds, that he didn't have to continue with his leather work so much. At any rate, he's taking his time, spending time in the synagogue. I think that's important to pause here and think about this. He still is a Jew. He believes he's a Jew through and through. It wasn't as if somehow everything of his Judaism was thrown out the window when he came to faith in Christ. No, his Messiah is a Jew, and his Messiah went into the temple. Everything was Jewish. So he continues doing this, but he's convinced over and over again the fact that he is a believer, that Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah, the anointed one, the promised one of the Old Testament. And when there's opposition and then he's thrown out, that's when he says, okay, I'm not going to be bothering you guys anymore. I shake the dust off it. It's on your responsibility from this point on. But he's right next door to the synagogue, and one of the synagogue officials and his whole family become believers. So there's a start of a community there. And more than likely, the patterns of that community would follow exactly what was found in the synagogue, but now with the eyes of faith in the Messiah, Jesus. And so this is where the beginnings of this great church that was to start there, a church that would also have quite a number of problems where Apostle Paul had to address later on. But it's the beginnings of this great work there in Corinth, kind of a beachhead in the middle of a city that was pretty decadent. Stay safe, folks. Hopefully we get to see each other soon. Bye for now.